The summer season is knocking on the door and is sure to bring its fair share of weather events. What can we expect, and will this be a summer to remember? The answers are all ahead as we bring together our team of experienced meteorologists in this special report. Keep your cool, summer of 2017. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm FiOS 1 News Chief Meteorologist Brian Fitzgerald. This half hour, we'll discuss hurricanes, climate change, the summer forecast, and a very special event, a total solar eclipse, the likes of which have not been seen in the United States for nearly 40 years.
Don't miss it at all. Otherwise, I'll be after you.
Joining me now is FiOS 1 meteorologist Joe Rayo. Joe, you've been an expert in the field of astronomy for many years. What are we looking at this summer?
This summer, we're going to see perhaps the greatest natural spectacle that you can possibly see, and that is a total eclipse of the sun. Now, it's not going to be total here in the tri-state area, unfortunately. However, this is going to be the first time that the path of the total eclipse is going to run across the country from coast to coast since 1918. 12 million people already live in the path, but if you're within a day's drive, and there are about 200 million people that are going to be within a day's drive, including our own area, you'll have a chance to see the greatest astronomical, natural spectacle that you will ever see in your entire lifetime.
Joe, I'm looking forward to that later this half hour. We're going to be talking about that and much more. And from the eclipse to hurricanes, meteorologist Joe Chaffee has been tracking these storm systems around our region for more than 30 years, and we know the impacts they can have in the area. Joe has filed this report.
Another summer means vacations, the beach, long, warm days at the shore. However, it also means that another hurricane season will get underway, and as is the case every year, what we can expect is a bit of a mystery. While a tropical storm or hurricane could threaten any time between June and November, June and July East Coast threats are rare. It is the August to October timeframe that Long Island and New Jersey need to pay close attention to. Hurricane Sandy came in late October 2012. The 1938 hurricane was in mid-September, and there have been quite a few hurricanes and tropical storms that have impacted our area that have occurred outside the peak time frame. It is also important to recognize that a below-average season is meaningless if the one major storm that hits land happens to be where you live.
Big difference between how busy the season might or might not be overall and how bad it might be in your community if just one hurricane forms anywhere in the Atlantic Gulf Caribbean this year and it comes to your town. You're not going to care what the seasonal overall activity was. You're going to care that you got hit. And I lived through that in 1983 in Alicia in Houston, Texas. It was a way below average hurricane season. One major hurricane the entire year, and that major hurricane hit where I lived.
Upper level winds, or what we call the jet stream, is the big player here. For a storm to move up the East Coast, you need a strong southerly jet from Florida northward. This doesn't happen too often. Most times, winds along the East Coast are from the west, which protect our area from tropical storms and hurricanes. But every so often, you get everything to set up in a dangerous alignment. Strong southerly winds in the upper atmosphere, warm water temperatures in the late summer and early fall, and a hurricane getting steered toward the U.S. East Coast. Add a full moon, and then you have something like what happened with Hurricane Sandy, with record storm surge and coastal flooding. Sandy is the storm that will stay in the memories of many in New Jersey and Long Island, but here lies the rub.
So when the next hurricane threatens the New York, New Jersey area, don't be thinking, well, I got through Sandy, so this hurricane can't possibly be a problem for me. What if it's different and it causes wind, water, or both at your house or in your community worse than Sandy, worse than everything you've ever experienced? Then you're putting yourself at risk because of your experience in Sandy. Every hurricane's got its own DNA. You got to keep your eye on the ball when that next hurricane's approaching. The threat is brand new and it could be very different.
The question of what kind of season we will have remains unanswered. El Nino plays a big role. Warmer than average Pacific Ocean temperatures create strong westerly winds across the southeast United States, which would keep hurricanes away. A weak El Nino was forecast for this season, but it may not materialize. Non-El Nino years mean greater than average activity. So where are we when it comes to a forecast? Most hurricane seasons come and go with no storms moving up the East Coast and impacting either Long Island or New Jersey.
Now that we have better tools, we have graphics, we have a new storm surge watch and warning, we have an inundation graphic, we're going to be able to better communicate to help emergency management and the media make better decisions on conveying that information to the general public, and the general public will have the ability to make better decisions as to whether or not they should leave.
Meanwhile, we'll watch and see what the coming months bring. We'll be relaxing on the shore, but remember that a little early prepping goes a long way. I'm meteorologist Joe Chaffee, FiOS 1 News.
Thanks, Joe. Now to climate change. According to experts, each year so far this century has been among the warmest on record. But what impact does that have locally? We asked FiOS 1 News meteorologist Jeff Banson to look into it.
Whatever your climate change beliefs may be, the numbers don't lie. Over the last half century, global temperatures have been trending warmer, mostly through increased carbon dioxide production. CO2 and other greenhouse gases retain incoming solar radiation in our atmosphere, which warms the planet. Consider this. The tri-state area's top 10 warmest years have all occurred since 1998, with the last 3 years making up the top 3. 2016 was number 1. And it's not just here. Across the U.S., a whopping 98% of all weather stations ended the year warmer than normal. Warmer weather can be a catalyst for earlier season arrivals. Since 1970, vernal, or spring, temperatures have increased by as much as 3.2 degrees across the tri-state. Thus, winter has been yielding to spring sooner and is projected to continue doing so. This can have negative impacts, such as plants budding early, increased allergies, disruptions of insects and wildlife, and the potential for crop damage. Warmer temperatures can also lead to more rain. For every 1 degree Fahrenheit increase in temperature, the atmosphere can hold 4% more water vapor. Perhaps not so coincidentally, heavy downpours have increased across the country, particularly in the Northeast. That could explain the higher frequency of flash flooding and the quick reversal of recent droughts in California and here at home. And of course, no climate change discussion is complete without a possible correlation to rising seas. To get some more insight on that, I spoke with Ross Dickman, meteorologist in charge for the New York National Weather Service.
When you look at it over the last 100 years, we've seen about a foot of sea level rise across the area. So you take a storm like Sandy that occurred in 2012, and it's starting at a higher base in terms of sea level for that storm surge to actually occur. So 100 years ago, it would have been a foot lower. And so you can extrapolate that out in about 2050 or the year 2100. You get a storm like Sandy, and you're dealing with about another 2 to 4 feet of water.
With each day comes new data, information that will one day paint a clearer picture to man's effect on our changing climate. Until then, the debate rages on. I'm FiOS 1 News meteorologist Jeff Banson.
Jeff and the rest of the FiOS 1 weather team will be back with our expert roundtable discussion. We will talk about hurricanes, the summer forecast, summer tips that could keep you prepared, and the total solar eclipse that's going to be moving across the United States that hasn't been seen in nearly 40 years. Meteorologist Joe Rayo will have the details on that coming up. Welcome back to our FiOS 1 Long Island special report, and we have our expert panel of FiOS 1 meteorologists with us. We have meteorologist Joe Chaffee, meteorologist Joe Rayo, meteorologist Addison Green, and Jeff Banson. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. You know, a lot going on this summer, a lot of things to talk about. It feels like every year it gets a little more intense with the public. Everyone gets a little more into this weather stuff. Joe, you were dealing with our hurricane side of stuff. What is the forecast looking like this year? And then you had an interesting take on that forecast as well.
Well, to focus on the actual number of storms, I've always thought was a pretty meaningless exercise because you're never going to get the exact number. But the more important thing is, in terms of the activity of the season, it really doesn't matter. You could have a very active season and not see a tropical storm within hundreds of miles of Long Island. If you have an inactive season, if that one storm winds up hitting you, then you've got a problem. And I think that's really where the focus should be.
Yeah. So that's the point, and I think that's what you're trying to drive home, so that when you're thinking about this, yes, okay, overall we're saying maybe the season is a little less active, but that doesn't mean your community may not be vulnerable.
Correct. And one of the takeaways from Sandy, because Sandy really is now going to be the generational storm that everybody is going to mention. Anytime anything spins up in the tropics, is it the next Sandy? Well, one of the things to bear in mind, and I think Dr. Knabb made this point very well, in that there are places that didn't get hit very hard with Sandy. If that was your particular experience, your takeaway is going to be, well, I did okay. Nothing happened with Sandy. I did okay. This storm will do the same thing, which is basically maybe not take any action. And that could be the wrong decision.
Yeah, as we know, they're always different. Summer itself, Joe, I mean, we're looking at the summer forecast. We're thinking, everyone wants to know, are we going to be at the beach this summer? Is it going to be hot? You've been looking into a little bit of the summer forecast.
You know, what always is interesting to me is that when the winter is coming on, everybody wants to know the winter forecast. Everybody wants to know how much snow are we going to get? Is it going to be a very cold winter? It's not quite that way when the summer is coming on. Everybody just arbitrarily assumes, yeah, the summer's going to be hot. We're going to have some hot days and cool days or whatever. But right now, according to the Climate Prediction Center, if you take their forecast at face value, our part of the country will actually be warmer than normal during the months of June, July, and August. And precipitation-wise, it's a coin toss, equal chances. Sure. So we could have, probably there'll be some days when we have, thunderstorms and heavy showery rains, and there'll be other periods of time when we may have, a stretch of dry weather. It doesn't look like, though, we're going to have a long stretch of dry weather that might possibly place us back in a drought, but you never know. We'll have to wait until the end of the summer and look back and see how those forecasts turned out. That's for sure. And, one of the things we struggle with as broadcast meteorologists, guys, and I know the National Weather Service deals with the same thing, is the public's perception of how we put these forecasts out. Now, Addison, you and I have been talking about that, and I think it's important to note that when we're looking at this and we're putting together a forecast, that we're trying to hit those certain points so we're getting it off in a clear, calm manner that the public can understand. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely so, because a lot of people want to know the nitty-gritty of the forecast details, but oftentimes we have to, fill in the space with, extra graphics or extra info. But it's always one of those difficult situations every season, from winter to summer and in between. How do we get the vital information to keep the public safe? Knowing about riptide current issues at the beach, knowing about heavy shovelable snow in the wintertime season. So it's always trying to get that message out. But then I always feel like we always have to reiterate that every single year, because sometimes get a little amnesia when it comes to the seasons.
And one of the things that's always getting reiterated, and you hear in the national media, you hear in the local media, Jeff, climate change. And, talk about a coin toss, guys. Jeff got the tough one on this. And as we're talking about climate, you found some interesting things and some interesting misconceptions, did you not?
Right. I mean, it's everybody's favorite topic nowadays. You're either leaning one way or you're leaning another way, but when it comes down to it and it comes down to the numbers, there's an area there that's really not debatable. And interesting to note, as Joe was saying, warmer than normal. That's the way things have been trending the last decade or so. I mean, the top 10 warmest years of the last 50 to 100 years are all happening now in the last decade or so. Going along that, a lot of people try to tie winter temperatures into summer temperatures all the time. Is it going to be a hot summer because we had a warm winter? Really not, actually. It's very interesting. Right across the board, 33% of the time you have a warm winter or a cold winter, a very little change that tells what the summer temperatures are going to be like. So I know everybody tries to give a reason for something happening. Oh, well, if this happens, then that's got to happen. In some cases, that's not true.
So we're saying just because the winter might be cold doesn't mean the summer is going to be chilly, or vice versa. We've got much more coming up this half hour. We've got meteorologist Addison Green, who's going to be running down some of the summer tips and preparedness methods that you could do to keep yourself ready for summer. And of course, what everyone's been looking forward to, Joe Rayo's total solar eclipse. So don't go away. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for this FiOS 1 News special report. Summer can be a challenging season. It comes with many risk factors. FiOS 1 News meteorologist Addison Green has some quick tips to help keep you prepared.
Thank you so much, Brian. And we're talking summer risk out there. Heat waves, they are a big concern because we got several days in a row of high heat and high humidity. And all that heat and humidity over time can maybe feed some strong to severe thunderstorms, which can produce tornadic activity, damaging hail, gusty winds, and even lightning, which a lightning strike out there in the middle of the open field could cause a fire that can get easily out of control. Therefore, you're talking about wildfire concerns. Wildfires put up a lot of smoke in the atmosphere that can cause some poor air pollution, and we can also get that in the urban areas as well, such as New York City. Everyone wants to go ahead and escape the cities and go down towards the beaches, but you have to be concerned with rip currents. Even on a mild-mannered day, we're going to be talking about a tropical storm nearby or a hurricane. You really have to be concerned with those rip current issues, so that's why you got to make sure you stay away from the beaches when you're talking about systems such as that. Now, heat and your vehicle can be a big problem in the summertime, even when the temperatures are running around 80 degrees or so, because inside the car with the windows closed, temperatures can climb within a matter of 10 minutes to close to 100 degrees. So you want to make sure you look into the back seat, check for your loved ones as well as your pets to make sure that they are not in harm's way. And when you're going out to the beaches, you want to make sure that you are taking a look at the rip current concerns because you don't want to get caught in one. But if you do get caught in one, don't worry, don't panic. You'll be okay. Just make sure you kind of relax yourself, let the rip current carry you away from the shore, then swim parallel to the shore. Once you escape the rip current, then you try to swim at an angle back to shore and get closer towards the beach where you can eventually be rescued. But you definitely don't want to try to swim against the rip current because you'll tire yourself out and then you'll just be dragged further away from the shore. For FiOS 1 News, I'm meteorologist Addison Green.
FiOS 1 News meteorologist Joe Rayo now joining us as we're talking total solar eclipse. Joe, I know I'm excited about this. The viewers at home are excited. What are we looking at this summer?
We're looking at a site, Brian, that has not been visible from here in the continental United States in almost 2 generations. One of the most beautiful, spectacular things that you will ever see in your lifetime. And we're going to tell you where you can see it, how you can see it, and talk a little bit about the subject and science of this amazing site, an eclipse of the sun. Perhaps the most awesome dramatization of the machinery of the solar system is a total solar eclipse, when the moon passes directly between the Earth and the sun. And yet, down through the ages, such a sight has been cause for terror and superstition. But today, in our 21st century world, it's a much different story. For in today's society, an impending eclipse of the sun can mean exciting and enlightening entertainment.
I want everyone to send me their bucket list, and I'm going to review it for you. And if on that bucket list it does not include observing a total solar eclipse, I will scratch off something on that list and replace it. Replace it with that.
Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, astrophysicist and director of New York's Hayden Planetarium.
You have to see a total solar eclipse before you die. It's stunning. It's one of the great spectacles of nature.
That great spectacle, one of the hot topics of the summer of 2017, is coming to the United States. On August 21st, the moon is going to orbit between the Earth and the sun, and a colossal cone-shaped shadow will be cast 232,000 miles down upon the Earth. On that third Monday in August, that dark 70-mile-wide shadow of the moon will first touch the Earth 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii. Then it will move northeast, then east over the Pacific Ocean, making landfall at the coast of Oregon. The shadow will then swerve southeast, taking 90 minutes to cut a 2,500-mile path across parts of 14 states and plunging millions into darkness for up to 160 seconds. It will be the first time since 1979 that the shadow of the moon has passed over the continental United States.
Depending on where you are in the eclipse path, because what is the eclipse path? The moon is coming in front of the sun. And the moon's shadow, which is always somewhere in space, now happens to drag across Earth's surface. And so if you happen to be in the shadow, you will see the sun slowly disappear and then disappear entirely. Then stars will come out. It will be darkness in the middle of broad daylight. So should you book a travel vacation to go to some place for an event that lasts 2.5 minutes totality? Yes, you should. Yes, because you will remember that for the rest of your life.
And echoing Dr. Tyson's sentiments are many other astronomers eagerly awaiting this summer's big sky show.
Is the most amazing natural phenomenon that astronomers can offer the general public.
Astronomer Kelly Beatty is senior editor at Sky and Telescope magazine, and to him, a solar eclipse is so much more than it just getting dark.
The sky gets dark, the temperature drops, birds go to roost, animals go to roost, the shadows get this eerie, sharp quality to them because most of the sun is covered. It's a set of phenomena that most people have never experienced before, and just seeing the shadow engulf you is amazing in itself.
But the eclipse will not be confined just to the narrow band of totality. Surrounding the zone of total eclipse will be a much larger shadow, measuring about 6,000 miles in diameter, that over a span of more than 5 hours will sweep over all of North America, as well as parts of South America, Africa, and Europe. So everybody in the United States, including Hawaii, will get a chance to see a part of this celestial show.
The entire rest of the country will also see an eclipse, a partial eclipse of the sun, that will be dramatic as well, but not nearly as much as it will be in that path of the moon's shadow.
Indeed, here in the tri-state area, we'll be treated to a relatively large partial eclipse. The show will get underway at 1:23 p.m., when a small bite will begin to appear on the right edge of the sun. The peak of the eclipse will come at 2:44 p.m., briefly producing a sort of counterfeit twilight effect and dropping the temperature several degrees. The eclipse will come to an end at 4 o'clock, when the moon completely moves off the sun's disk. But make no mistake about it, the real show is going to be the total eclipse, and I've been trying to do my best to spread the word, trying to convince as many people as possible to travel into the path of totality. Recently, at Rockland Community College in Suffern, I was invited to give a presentation at NEAF, the Northeast Astronomy Forum, one of the biggest space expositions in the country. It was there that I tried to convey to my audience the wonders of a total solar eclipse. And I've also been spreading the word to school children about the upcoming eclipse. In fact, I just wrote a children's book about stargazing and included a chapter on it. The safest way to watch the eclipse is to let the sun's light pass through a pinhole in a card projected onto another card. Or let sunlight pass through a leafy tree. In the shadow of the tree, you'll see many projected eclipse images. And for those fortunate to be in the zone where the eclipse will be total, good news. You can look for the few minutes the sun is totally covered directly at it without harming your eyes.
And here we'll have one in our own backyard that millions of people will be able to see. School children will be able to see. They'll tell their children and their grandchildren about it. It is just going to be the best game in town.
And a final comment from Dr. Tyson.
So, yes, don't miss it at all. Otherwise, I'll be after you.
Not much more I can add to that. Third Monday in August, August the 21st, a rare and spectacular, beautiful sight, and I hope everybody has a chance to see it.
I hope so. What a great story, Joe. Thanks for sharing. Amazing. Total solar eclipse. Can you imagine that? Well, for Joe, myself, and the entire FiOS 1 weather team, we want to thank you for joining us. Have a great day.